Welcome to a story where family loyalty is a lie, marriage is a mask, and silence becomes the sharpest weapon of all. This isn't about petty arguments or small misunderstandings. This is about inheritance turned into leverage, love used as camouflage, and the kind of betrayal that happens behind closed doors while everyone smiles at the dinner table. A luxury penthouse becomes the price of obedience. A husband plays the role of protector while quietly standing on the wrong side. A stranger arrives with proof no one was meant to see. And revenge doesn't explode, it waits, watches, and exposes. If you've ever trusted the wrong people, sacrificed for family, or believed love would protect you, this story will hit differently. Stay with it until the end because the truth doesn't arrive loudly, but when it does, nothing survives it. The penthouse was never just concrete and glass. It was proof that loyalty could exist without permission, that success didn't need approval. Yet, the moment family eyes lingered too long on the skyline view, it stopped being a home and turned into leverage. The word sacrifice arrived first, wrapped in concern. Parents spoke about unity. The sisters' struggles were presented like a moral test, one that demanded obedience rather than compaction. Every conversation carried the same quiet pressure. How much easier life would be if one person gave up a little more. The husband stood beside it all, nodding gently, playing the role of peacekeeper. Soft reassurances followed late at night, promises that family harmony mattered more than property, that love meant compromise. Trust came easily then, because marriage is supposed to be a shield. The transfer papers were signed under smiles and forced gratitude. Applause echoed in the empty living room, already stripped of its meaning. What wasn't said hurt more than what was demanded. No one asked if it felt right. No one asked if it felt fair. What remained hidden was the real reason the penthouse was chosen. The sister wasn't drowning in bad luck. She was drowning in debt, loans taken recklessly, deals made without skill, and the husband, steady, reliable, trusted, had been quietly involved. Signatures forged, emails deleted, conversations erased. The penthouse wasn't a gift, it was collateral disguised as kindness. Family dinners continued like theater. Toasts were raised, laughter sounded hollow. The husband became distant, protective of a phone that never left reach. Late nights turned routine. Questions were brushed aside with irritation, as if curiosity were betrayal. The truth surfaced not through confession, but through cracks. A bank inquiry, a missing document, a conversation overheard too late to stop. Every piece pointed back to the same conclusion. Loyalty had been staged and marriage used as camouflage. Blood ties didn't protect anyone. They sharpened the blade. The penthouse, once a symbol of achievement, became the silent witness to how easily love is traded when money enters the room. Family didn't steal it alone. The man trusted most helped hand over the keys. And that was the moment everything stopped being about sacrifice and started being about survival. The marriage looked solid from the outside, built on routines that felt safe and familiar. Morning coffee prepared just the way it was liked, text messages checking in, a hand placed gently at the small of the back during family gatherings, signaling unity. Devotion was never loud, just constant enough to feel real. When the pressure from family began, the husband became the calm voice in the storm, encouraging patience, suggesting understanding, repeating that family only wanted what was best. Every doubt was softened with affection, every hesitation answered with reassurance. Trust grew deeper because it felt protected. What stayed hidden was how carefully that protection was staged. Private conversations were happening elsewhere. Late-night calls ended abruptly when footsteps approached. Emails were sent, deleted, and never mentioned. Family plans were discussed without the one person they affected most. Intimacy became the perfect cover. No one suspects betrayal when love is being performed so well. The husband knew exactly when to push and when to comfort. When anger flared, arms opened. When resistance appeared, guilt followed. Words like selfish and ungrateful were never spoken aloud, just implied in silence. Sacrifice was framed as proof of love, and love was used as leverage. The truth arrived slowly, like pieces of glass under bare feet. A financial document that didn't make sense. A signature that looked familiar but wasn't authorized. A conversation overheard through a door left slightly open. The husband's voice sounded different there. Confident, strategic, detached. Plans were discussed calmly, including timelines, risks, and how emotions would eventually cool down. Marriage hadn't been a partnership in those conversations. It was an asset. Every shared memory suddenly felt edited. Late nights weren't about work. Family gatherings weren't about unity. Even apologies were calculated, delivered only when suspicion grew too close. Love had been rehearsed, perfected, and weaponized. Confrontation didn't bring regret. It brought excuses, claims of good intentions, statements about protecting the family's future. Blame shifted effortlessly, as if betrayal were a misunderstanding rather than a choice repeated over months. The most painful realization wasn't the loss of trust. It was understanding how intimacy had been used to disarm suspicion, every kiss after a lie, every promise spoken while already planning the next deception. The marriage didn't collapse in one moment. It cracked quietly, piece by piece, until nothing remained but clarity. And clarity made one thing undeniable. The betrayal didn't come from strangers. It slept in the same bed. The lowest moment didn't arrive loudly. It settled in quietly after everything familiar had already been taken. The penthouse was gone. Family calls had slowed. The husband moved through the house like a guest waiting for permission to stay, polite but distant, already half gone. That was when the stranger appeared. Not dramatic, no warning, just a request for a meeting, delivered through an email that didn't beg for attention. The tone was professional, almost indifferent, as if the truth were routine business. Curiosity won over exhaustion. The stranger spoke carefully, choosing words that carried weight without emotion. A folder was placed on the table. Inside were copies, not originals, bank transfers, loan agreements, email chains, timelines, everything laid out with surgical precision. What stood out wasn't the scale of the betrayal, it was how coordinated it had been. The husband's name appeared again and again, never as a victim, always as a participant. Conversations with the sister that sounded nothing like family concern. Messages discussing how pressure would work best, how guilt could be applied, how resistance would eventually break. There were jokes, even laughter, about how emotional reactions would fade once the asset changed hands. Marriage had been discussed like a strategy, not a bond. The stranger explained the role simply: a financial investigator hired by a lender that suspected fraud. The penthouse had triggered alarms, too clean, too fast, too convenient, and once the thread was pulled, everything unraveled. The most shocking detail wasn't financial, it was personal. A recorded call played quietly in the room. The husband's voice sounded confident, amused. A comment about trust being useful, a remark about how love made people predictable, a promise to handle any fallout at home. Every private reassurance suddenly replayed in the mind, stripped of sincerity. The stranger didn't offer comfort, didn't give advice, just left copies and a single sentence: everyone involved thinks silence will protect them. Family lies rely on secrecy. Marriage lies rely on intimacy. Both collapse when someone outside the circle refuses to play along. The confrontation that followed didn't need shouting. The documents spoke first. The husband's face changed, not to regret, but to calculation. Explanations followed, then blame, then anger. None of it mattered anymore, because the outsider had already done the damage that mattered most. The lies weren't exposed with revenge, they were exposed with evidence. And once the truth entered the room, nothing built on deception survived. Revenge didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It arrived quietly, disguised as patience. While everyone else believed the damage had already been done, attention shifted to timing. Silence became useful. Listening became sharper. Every lie leaves a paper trail when people grow careless. Contracts were requested under the pretense of closure. Old emails were recovered from archived accounts no one thought to clean. Recordings surfaced from devices assumed forgotten. Nothing illegal was taken, only what had already been given freely, spoken confidently, signed without fear. The husband remained unaware, still playing the role of the misunderstood partner, still blaming stress, still convinced the worst was over. Family members turned on each other in private, each assuming loyalty where none existed. That was the weakness. Manipulators never believe they'll be manipulated. Documents were shared strategically, not all at once, just enough to make one person defensive, another suspicious, and a third desperate. A single email forwarded to the wrong sibling, a contract quietly clarified by an attorney who asked inconvenient questions, a recording referenced, never played, letting imagination do the damage. The family began unraveling from the inside. The sister accused the parents of withholding information. The parents questioned the husband's role. The husband denied everything until confronted with details only one person could know. Voices rose behind closed doors. Stories stopped aligning. Lies demanded new lies, and the structure collapsed under its own weight. The most satisfying part wasn't watching panic spread, it was watching confidence disappear. The husband's tone changed first. Explanations turned sloppy. Anger replaced charm. The same man who once spoke about love and unity now spoke about self-preservation. Promises were replaced with threats. Affection vanished the moment it stopped working. Meetings followed. Lawyers replaced dinners. The penthouse, once traded so casually, became evidence. Accounts were frozen. Agreements were disputed. Everyone scrambled to save themselves, stepping over each other without hesitation. No accusations were screamed. No demands were made. The truth was simply placed where it couldn't be ignored. That was the power they never expected, reclaiming control without asking permission, without begging for fairness, without needing approval. Revenge didn't require destruction. Exposure did all the work. When it was over, nothing was taken back. The penthouse didn't need to return. The marriage didn't need repair. What mattered was watching every person involved finally face the cost of believing silence meant safety. Because the loudest revenge is letting the truth speak for itself. If this story kept you listening, if the truth felt sharp and real, don't forget to like. It helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Subscribe for more real, powerful stories about hidden betrayals, family secrets, and quiet revenge that speaks louder than screams. Turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Until the next story, remember, sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's control.